Hey, my name is PolishLynx and welcome to Seduce Me to the Demon War. And as you may or may not know, I played the first Seduce Me, and there we went for Diana route. And in this one, of course, I'm going to do the same thing. So, tutorial. Do I need to go through tutorial? Can I just start the game? Oh. Purple.
Hold on there! Before you start the game, I need to ask you a few things. Don't want you getting lost now.
Huh?
First of all, have you read the first story, Seduce Me the Otome? Like, seriously read it. No skimming, no pretending to read it. No. It's okay if you haven't, but there are a lot of things in this game that you won't understand unless you fully experienced and understood that story first.
Well, the first thing I don't understand is why the main menu was like in full screen and in here it's cut a bit. I'll have to stretch it in while editing for sure. Yeah, I read it a long time ago, so I might not remember a lot of things, but whatever. Yes!
Oh, okay. Awesome. Next question. You do know this is Diana's route, right? The succubus princess that tried to bring the boys back to the demon world?
Yep, I know.
Oh, awesome. All right then. Diana's a very interesting character, huh? Anyway, I have one last question for you. Some people like hearing the trigger warnings before they start games, while others don't really care and just want to play. It's cool either way, but do you want to know about some of the content listed in the game?
Yeah, sure, thanks.
No
Why
problem.
not?
It's my pleasure. Well, this game is recommended for players ages 18 and up. Trigger warnings include suicide, war, torture, mentions of rape, and a large amount of violence and sexual content. Don't worry though, any sex scene choice you encounter is completely up to you. You can play this game without needing to go through the sex scenes and still get the good endings. Consent is important. I think that should be everything. All right. Phew, that took a while.
Heh.
You forgot something.
Huh? What did I forget?
You forgot about the disclaimer.
Eh?
Oh, crap! Oh, how could I have forgotten about that?
It's fine, I'll take care of it. This game was produced by Michaela Laws using the Ren'Py visual novel engine. We truly hope you enjoy this story.
Thanks, Diana. Now, don't you have a war to go fight?
I do. I just wanted to make sure everything was in order before the story began. I'll take my leave now.
Thanks, Di.
Do not call me Di!
Anyway, we really do hope you like the story. Have fun! See you at the end.
Yeah! What's your name, President? Well, it was Mika, so we are staying with this one. I was in love with a succubus. It was true, I had fallen for the charms of a succubus and I was about to dive headfirst into the demon world with her to save her kingdom. And after all, it's in the full screen, so I won't stretch what was before with the K. Okay.
Do you have any regrets?
None. I smiled as Diana held me in her arms and carried us both through the night sky. We had shared a sweet kiss, the first of hopefully many in the future, and were about to cast a spell to enter the demon world. Diana looked to the ground that was far below us and pointed her free hand down towards it, closing her eyes.
Revitara tenebras, gelato locum, pater portas.
As the last word left her mouth, a large purple pentagram appeared in the grass, before twisting and becoming a black void. I gripped onto Diana, scared at what I was seeing.
Last chance.
I gulped at the sight of not sure of what to make of this. Was this really what I wanted to My curiosity, however, guided my decision and forced me to take a deep breath. I closed my eyes and let calm wash over me before looking up at Diana. Let's go! Diana smiled and wrapped both arms around me, laying a protective hand over my head.
Hang on.
I tightened my grip on Diana, obeying her command as I held tight. I felt air quickly begin to rush past our bodies as Diana tilted back and began to let us fall towards the ground. Was she insane? A bit, maybe. I looked at Diana, seeing her smirk at me before closing her eyes. I did the same, naturally preparing for an impact with the ground. What I felt was a cool rush of energy brushing over my skin, as if I had fallen into water. I slowly opened my eyes and found myself staring into a vast, dark space, holding on to a woman who was no longer wearing clothes. I was clinging to a woman who had no clothing, but instead had purple marks across her skin and horns adorning her head. However, I could tell that this woman was still Diana, just by looking into her eyes. Okay. So, we are going there. Diana smiled at me and kissed my forehead before tightening her hold on me and muttering softly,
Adlelit Castra.
I held to her body as I felt us begin to move through the space, as if a giant fan had pushed us forward. Onward we continued through the darkness, with me unsure of where we were going and Diana guiding the way. We began to slow and soon a small light appeared, slowly growing as we got closer to it. I had to shut my eyes as it began to consume us. I felt waveless. I couldn't feel anything except the woman in my arms, and it felt somehow exquisite. I wanted to draw in this feeling, become lost in it. However, our journey through the light was coming to an end. The light around us faded away and soon I found myself lying on Diana as she lay on a stone floor. The air, however, smelled of fire and blood. Well, that doesn't look good for us. I looked up, seeing fire everywhere inside. What the heck? This was the demon ward? A loud shout forced me to look over and see a man running at me with a spear and a large filled expression. I screamed and rolled off of Diana, scooting away to avoid being scared. As he continued towards me, I screamed,
No!
I looked up to see Diana kneeling in front of me and gripping the man's spear, pointing it away from her. The man stared wide-eyed at Diana as she glared back.
My lady, you live?
Of course I do. I told you I would return, and thus I have.
The man gave a small sigh of relief, lowering his weapon and propping up to lean against it. As I examined him now that he wasn't gunning for me, he was wounded and exhausted, panting heavily and gripping his spear tightly.
I'm so glad.
As he finally toppled over, Diana gasped and rushed over, kneeling beside him.
Settle!
I rushed over as well, wanting to see what was going on. Who was he? Why did he attack me? Why was the room on fire?
Settle! What happened?
We were attacked by the demon lord. He took advantage of your absence.
That bastard! I began to cough violently. We needed to get out of this room, wherever we were. Diana, we need to get out of here, huh? Maybe. Diana nodded and grabbed my hand and saw arrows, chanting under her breath. The room around us began to shift as if it were changing instead of us moving. Soon we were outside the castle, staring at it as flames erupted from each window. What was happening? Diana's face was of pure shock, staring at the castle in absolute terror. All of the color, besides for the purple marks on her skin, had faded to a pale white in horror.
We drove them back, but the flames are too powerful.
At that moment, something in Diana's eyes changed. Her anger sparked and she stood, quickly walking around us and towards the castle. Diana?
Come! I command thee, white winds! Crush these fires beneath your hands!
I stared as the wind in the air quickly began to pick up and a purple glow began to surround Diana's body. It was like a storm was rushing towards us, but there was no rain or thunder, just wind. The winds forced back the flames that danced in the windows, and smoke began to rise from each one, signaling the death of the fire. The windows continued to be filled with wind and air, most likely to kill the flames deep within the walls. I, however, could only stare at Diana. Her body was rigid and her gaze was intently focused on the stone castle. Soon the winds began to die out, and all that was left was smoke rising from the windows into the dark purple and black sky.
You did it. How?
Diana looked at Sarah, intensity still embedded in her eyes.
Where are the king and queen?
I heard Sarah's brief hitch, and I turned to look at him. He had a look of pure pain and guilt. What had happened? Diana walked over and stared down at him, now almost glaring daggers at him as she clenched her fists at her sides.
Speak, Sarah!
The imp demons. While we were fighting the flames in the army, the imp demons snuck through our defenses.
My heart, despite not fully understanding the situation, began to tighten. Something was incredibly wrong. Cyril shut his eyes as a pair of demons, as assumed to be aliens, rushed over and began casting magic over his body, closing his wounds.
They snuck into their room.
Diana suddenly turned and bolted towards the castle, causing Pete to jump up. Diana! Yeah, I began to sprint after her, following her inside the castle and trying to keep up with her. Her panic breath kept me following her direction, despite her fast twists and turns through the ashy corridors.
No.
I could hear Diana sobbing, praying as she ran. I did my best to keep up, not wanting to lose her, and not wanting her to be alone right now. We turned into a long hallway that had a pair of golden doors at the end. They were unscathed, as if the flames had not disturbed the door or perhaps the room behind it.
Please be alive. Please!
Diana bolted 40 doors and began to pull them open. Grunting at the wave, I stopped running, skidding forward from the abrupt stop. Whomever she wanted alive, I hoped that they were as well. As the doors finally opened, however, the foul stench of blood erupted from behind them, the scent filling my nostrils. Can I actually have a look at something? Diana flung the doors wide open and could only stare at the sight we both saw. Blood covered the floor, the walls, and the ceiling. Ouch! That won't be easy. The entire room was painted in gore, skin, bone, and massive amounts of blood. Only 3 things, barely coated in red, stood in the middle of the room, on the ground. 2 broken crowns, and a small tire that was barely large enough to fit a newborn's head. Oh.
No.
Diana slowly walked into the room, the blood on the ground painting her bare feet, and she fell to her knees, in front of the items, staring down at them. I couldn't bring myself to enter the room with her. I watched as she lifted them to her chest, curling her shoulders over herself and shaking almost violently.
Father. Mother. Odebel.
As she continued to grieve over the ornaments in her hands, a dark, almost deadly and evil-looking aura surrounded her body. It began to flicker and grow, like a dark flame that wanted to engulf the room she knelt in. As it reached an apex and began to violently flicker through the room around her, Diana arched back and screamed to the ceiling, her voice heavily laced with magic, pain, and rage. Watching her body burn in the intense black and purple flame-like energy made my heart stop in fear. I had never seen her like this, and I was scared as to where her anger would drive her next. Stop her or watch in silence. Well, we could watch as she's getting angry, but we could also try to stop her so she doesn't go berserking inside the castle or something like that, you know. Let's try. I mean, let's try to stop her. As heartbreaking as this situation was, I couldn't let anger consume her. Not like this. If she wanted to vent her rage, then it was better to aim it at the ones who wronged her, not let it burn in the room where her family died. I stepped into the room, blocking the waves of energy from my face with my arms, and eventually made my way to the screaming Diana. Diana! My words couldn't reach her. I stepped closer, almost hovering over her, before dropping to my knees, raising myself and wrapping my arms around Diana. Her screaming stopped and her body froze within my arms. Diana quaked like a shivering child in my arms as I pressed my forehead against her hair. Diana, we'll get your revenge. But you must save that rage for the fight. I was met with silence as my reply. After a moment, Diana finally slumped into my arms, while the energy around her died out.
You're right.
Diana and I left the room, with her unable to turn around and look back. We walked through the ancient corridors of the castle, Diana silenced by the sight and by her own grief. My heart was heavy for her. Still, the demon lord who had done this was still a threat at large, and who knew when he would return. Diana led the way to the room, which, as expected, was as burned as could be. However, Diana wanted her hand through the air, casting some sort of silent spell. Through some of the prestidigitation, the ash and soot in the room vanished, and the furniture and decor were repaired. We at last stepped in with Diana slowly lying down on the bed, unable to carry on any further. Looking at Diana's face, her eyes were puffy and red, while her skin almost became void of any color beyond the taint of her demon marks. If she wasn't breathing, one would assume that she was dead. Diana stared at the ceiling, a world of emotion swimming in her eyes. Despite what had happened, at last she spoke.
I need to send you back.
Hey. What? Now was not the time to think about me, and I knew it. Besides, I came here for a reason. I wasn't going to go back knowing that Diana needed support. I had no regrets in coming here, and I would help her through this. No, Diana.
It's too dangerous here.
I don't care. Diana sat up slowly and looked at me, a form of weak anger in her eyes. However, she knew that it was fruitless to argue with me. After all, she made a deal with me, and I could see the obligation to obey buried behind her anger. She closed her eyes and lowered her head.
The Demon Lord will most likely return.
And we'll be ready for him? I gently took Diana's hand and lifted her chin so that she had to look at me. The anger that was plunging her melted into sadness, and broken hope as she stared back into my gaze. There were remnants of rock tears adorning her face, and seeing her so scared made me frown. I knew that we would get through this. We just needed to rest for now. We would deal with the issues this world brought after.
My lady?
Diana and I turned our heads to see Sarah by the open door, and I stepped away from Diana, giving her space. Behind him, multiple soldiers, servants, and other demons rushed down the hall, most likely to check for other issues and possibly try to fix the damage on the castle.
Yes, Sarah?
Who is this human?
For a brief moment I could see a look of disdain in his eyes as he looked to me. However, it only lasted a second as he looked to Diana, waiting for her to reply to him.
Sarah, this is my guest. She came back with me too.
Then looked to me, trying to find the words in my eyes. What was I to her? My curiosity bubbled as I also awaited the completion of her answer.
She came to aid me in this war.
Ouch.
But what of your fiancé? What of the other sons?
They are gone. They have disappeared into the human world, and I can no longer trace them. I have failed.
The guilt and grief in Diana's voice deepened, most likely reminding herself that she saw the result of fading moments ago. Sarah, however, stepped up to Diana and knelt in front of her. Surprised me. What was he doing? He was a guard, first of all. Why was he being bold enough to step to her?
You didn't fail, my lady. The Demon Lord attacked us despite giving us his word that he would wait for you to return. He broke his end of the agreement.
I know.
Staring at Diana and Cyril, I could see that they had a very close and deep connection. Was Cyril a friend, or was he something more? I could recognize the emotions within Cyril's eyes as he looked up at Diana. He looked to be in love with her, or at least had some form of ultimate care for his lady. Cyril gently took one of Diana's hands and placed his lips upon it. Instantly, I could almost see energy flow from his body into hers, from the kiss alone. Was this how energy transfer worked when you weren't the giver or receiver? The color in Diana's skin returned and she let out a sigh with her body relaxing at last. Cyril, however, continued to keep his lips over her hand. Something in my gut irked me about him. Not that I was against Diana getting energy, but Cyril seemed to be extremely cozy with her, and being that she was someone who I potentially wished to be closer with, this was not now an obstacle I had to slowly break Diana away from. Diana and Cyril both looked up to me, with Cyril lifting his head from Diana's hand. At least it worked. Realizing what was going on, Diana looked to Cyril and smiled nervously before pulling her hand away from him.
Thank you, Sarah.
Cyril, however, stared at me, most likely knowing why I did what I had done. Another flash of disgust flashed in his eyes before he looked to Diana and bowed his head.
I am forever here to serve.
Cyril stood and stepped back, looking to his mistress and to me.
Do we plan to retaliate, my lady?
We will. I expect the Demon Lord will come for a second attack, not realizing that I have returned.
What can we do then? Diana looked to me, a small glimmer of fear in her eyes, but her resolve rekindled and she let a serious visage cover her oppression.
I will meet him on the battlefield should he come again.
My lady, you've just returned!
That I have, but the Demon Lord will not care if he learns of my return. If anything, news of my return will spur him to attack sooner than later. I must be there and stop him.
Diana looked to Cyril with a cold expression, making him stand up straight like the guard he was meant to be.
Tell everyone to mend their wounds and prepare for a second invasion tomorrow. I expect the Demon Lord will be ruthless enough to attack in the morning. Let everyone know as well that their princess has returned.
Cyril nodded and turned to the door to do his job. Before he exited the room, however, Diana called out one last thing to him which seemed to make him freeze.
And when you are done, please retire to my room. I will rest here for the night with my guest.
As you wish, my lady.
With that, Cyril left and closed the door behind him. The way Cyril answered Diana's in force, but I could understand why. After all, if he had feelings for her, I became an obstacle for him as I was with her. That didn't stop me, however, from wondering where I stood with Diana. She was going to stay here with me. This was my room? What? Diana let out a sigh and moved in the bed to rest against the back wall of the bed.
Come, we must rest.
Yeah! I nodded and walked over, lying beside her. However, instead of Diana lying down, she guided my head to rest on her lap. You're not going to sleep?
Demons don't sleep, dear. At least not in this world.
Why not?
Because if we shut our eyes for too long, then we open ourselves up for someone to take advantage of us, or kill us when we're not aware.
I gulped, now worried and frightened to sleep. Diana chuckled over and patted my head.
You can sleep, however. I will be resting, but my eyes will remain open.
Can you really rest like that?
Demons and humans are different, dear. Demons can function for years without needing to rest, as long as they continually feed on energy. However, demons can rest to stop spending energy. Thus why we have beds.
My curiosity began to peck at me again, but my exhaustion took control of my body. As I felt my eyes gradually shut, I could hear Diana whisper,
I hope that you don't mind me taking your energy as you sleep.
No! Before I let sleep consume me, I shook my head. It was right. Diana needed as much energy as she could for whatever the Demon Lord had in mind. I felt almost a bit honored that she was taking my energy from me, as odd as it was. At last, sleep consumed me. Despite What was happening around me? The world of sleep was peaceful and calm. For the moment I could truly be at rest. At least for a moment.
My sweet Isaiah.
Huh? I looked around the darkness of my dream, trying to pin down the direction of Sarah's voice. Why was he in my dream? There was no reason why he should have been here. The sound of footsteps echoed in my head, causing me to creep over it and look around frantically. What was happening? At last, a line in the darkness opened up to reveal it as an open door. Opening it was Sarah with a kind smile on his face, staring into the dark space. What? I looked to him, but he didn't seem to notice me as he stepped into the room and walked past me. I followed his walk and gasped at what he was walking towards. Now illuminated by light, I took in the sight of Diana in a jail cell on her hands and knees. Weak and frail as she stared at the one approaching her.
Sarah, what is happening? Why am I...
Shh. Everything is just fine, my lady.
My heart stopped as I watched Sarah kneel in front of Diana and slid his hand between her bars to lift her chin. Diana seemed to nuzzle his hand softly and unconsciously, making him chuckle.
Soon enough, I will destroy the Demon Lord and hand you the throne of the entire world. Everyone will bow to you as their queen and ruler, as they rightfully should.
He's crazy.
Sarah, I don't understand.
You may not understand now, but you will in time. I promise.
Diana crawled closer to Sarah, wrapping her hands around the bars to keep her up.
Where is she? What happened to the human?
For a moment Sarah stared at Diana, looking completely oblivious to what she meant. Hey, I'm right here! Despite knowing that what I was seeing was a dream, I instinctively called out to Diana, hoping she would see me regardless. To my displeasure, she didn't.
Who are you talking about, my queen?
You know who, Sarah. She...
Sarah silenced Diana by gripping her chin hard, making her gasp and stare up in shock at him.
My lady, I don't know who you are talking about.
You piece of crap! How dare you! Diana whimpered in his holding fright. Fear painted over Diana's expression as Sarah pressed his forehead against the bars to stare deep into her eyes. I felt myself rush at Sarah and try to grab him, but my hands merely phased through his body like I was a ghost.
My lady, you must stay here for now.
Why?
Then a single word died out as she stared into Sarah's eyes. Something in her eyes began to shift from red to gold. However, her black pupils slowly morphed into glowing black crosses. What was Sarah doing?
Because I have not yet finished the Demon Lord, my love.
My love, why this sudden change in name? I could only watch as Sarah leaned back with a grin.
Once I finish this war, then you may come out and fulfill your destiny. With only me at your side.
Well, you are going down for sure. Staring at Diana, I watched as she began to shed tears, but they were not clear as water but black as oil. On her chest, a black burn in the shape of a cross appeared, glowing with some sort of dark aura.
May those useless memories burn away. Remember only the one who has served you his entire life.
What a piece of shit you are. Sarah... My words were futile, but I couldn't stand there in silence. However, as Diana's tears finally stopped, the stains on her cheeks drank along her skin. Sarah stared into Diana's eyes, bearing his gaze into them.
Now, do you remember the human?
Who?
No, it couldn't be. The burn on her chest flashed a bright white aura before settling down, revealing the permanence it had over her skin. It was a real scar on her flesh, no longer a figment of magic. Sarah smiled lovingly at Diana before guiding her head forward and leaning in to kiss her between the bars. Diana closed her eyes and practically moaned against his lips, most likely feeling some sort of energy from it. However, Sarah pulled away gently and made Diana pant slightly neat. Was she that desperate for energy now?
Never mind, my love. Forget I said anything.
We are going down! Even if it is just a dream, Sarah ran his fingers over Diana's cheeks, causing Diana to shudder at the touch and let out a pleased sigh.
Now rest. Nothing will harm you in here.
Diana lay before slowly laying to the side and letting her body slowly shift to slumber. With another chuckle, Sarah stood and turned around.
That human's life for a stone destiny. A perfect trait, if I do say so myself.
You piece of shit! I snarled and rushed at him, but wound up running through his body and falling to the floor. Sarah walked back towards the open door and stood by it to look back at Diana with an almost evil-looking smile.
Nothing will keep us apart anymore, is there?
I jumped up and ran at him, but as he stepped through the closed door, I found myself shooting up out of bed to sit up, panting.
What? What's wrong?
I looked over to see Diana, sitting in the same spot as she was when I fell asleep, and staring at me with wide, concerned eyes. There was no mark on her chest, and no crossing her eyes, which made me feel somewhat relieved. I looked around, trying to see if Sarah was in the room, but he was nowhere to be found.
Are you alright?
Tell her, or let it go. Tell her, or let her go. Let it go, let it go. Tell her. I had to tell her about the dream. I turned to her and took her hands, making Diana gasp and stare at me in even more confused shock. I had a dream last night. Sarah locked you in some sort of jail cell and wiped your memories of me, and I couldn't do anything and...
Wait, stop. What?
Diana took one of her hands from mine and placed it on my head. Did she seriously not leave me agree as she stared at her hand? It's true.
I believe you, but I want to see it for myself.
Eh? I stared at her, now realizing that she was taking energy from me from my forehead. Diana closed her eyes and remained silent for a moment. How would she react? As she pulled her hand away, she smiled at me.
It was a nightmare, dear. I'm sorry you had it, but I can assure you, no magic like what you saw exists, nor would Sarah ever do that to me.
Are you sure? I don't trust that guy at all. I stared. I could see the genuine feeling behind her words, but somehow my gut wouldn't let this go. How could she be so sure that magic like that didn't exist? What if that piece of shit Sarah was a terrible person? But what if...
Sarah has been with me ever since I was a child. I would know if he was a bad person. There's nothing to...
Suddenly, the door to the room burst open, causing Diana and I to separate and stare at the intruder. It was a soldier who seemed to be a runner for the army, judging from his outfit.
Princess, the Demon Lord approaches!
Diana was right. The Demon Lord was going to show up today. I looked at the far window to see the sun barely up over the oddly colored purple sky. It was morning, as Diana expected. Diana clicked through her legs over the side of the bed and stood, pointing to the guard.
Tell every able-bodied soldier to head for the gates. I will be there shortly.
Yes, Your Highness!
The soldier ran out, followed by a handful of soldiers that either accompanied him or were heading in the same direction. I looked to Diana, surprised to see her ready. How much energy did she take during the night? As I got a good look of her, something about her seemed to have changed, but I couldn't put my finger on it.
I have to thank you.
Hey? For what? Diana turned to look at me with a smile. As she did, I could see a faint layer of purple energy surrounding her form, and her eyes glowing completely gold.
You gave me a large amount of energy last night.
Hey? Her voice echoed through the room, making me internally shudder. She sounded almost ethereal, and the power behind her voice almost drowned my senses. It was as if she were no longer a simple mortal, but a goddess. How much energy she consumed last night? I wonder. As the energy and glow in her eyes faded away, Diana smiled. Diana gently took my hand and rushed with me out of the room, guiding me out of the castle. Around us, servants and soldiers rushed in one direction or another.
I need you there beside me when I face him. You won't be hurt, I promise.
I followed step by step, nodding in reply. I felt a bit honored that she wanted me with her, but I shook off the excitement, knowing what I was walking towards. The Demon Lord was approaching, and he would be face to face with it. And we would be face to face with it. Exactly. Diana led me through the castle grounds and onto the battlements, overseeing the distance beyond the kingdom, where a large line of creatures lined up and outlined the horizon. I felt my heart stop as the tallest figure stood between them and us. Taller than any man I had ever witnessed was a man I was meeting for the first time, the Demon Lord. The mere sight of him sent fear down my spine. But this was the man who hurt Diana, so he was my enemy.
City of Lilith, rejoice! You will fall before the sun reaches its peak!
Diana released my hand and stepped between the embrasures of the wall and walked through the air towards the ground like she was descending an invisible staircase. As she did, I jumped at the sound of the soldiers on the ground, pointing their weapons towards the incoming army. Diana voice bellowed through the air, causing the line of creatures to step back in fear. As her feet touched the ground, the air seemed to pulse with energy. However, the demon lord stepped forward with a dark grin.
Succubus! You have returned. You have failed to bring my sons home, it seems.
The demon lord laughed at whatever Diana had shouted, making me worried for Diana. Would she be okay on her own? She stepped forward a couple of feet before pointing her palms toward the ground. Before my eyes, on Diana's back, the marks adorning her skin began to dance and weave before detaching themselves from her body and forming two large demonic wings. They flapped against the air in unison, causing a large gust of wind to push forward.
Soldiers of Lilith, come to my side if you wish to shed my enemy's blood.
As Diana spoke, the soldiers who had gathered at the front rushed forward and stood in two lines at Diana's sides, pointing their weapons at the demon lord and his army. In number, Diana and her soldiers were outmatched 10 or 20-fold. However, something told me that the battle would be in Diana's favor. At my sides, a large line of archers positioned themselves and aimed at the army, ready to fire on command.
Steady, men!
I looked to the side to see Saero walking down the line with his hand raised, waiting for a signal. However, the sight of him made me remember how he was in my nightmare. Could he be as evil as he was then? From Diana, a large fig tendril with a gigantic mouth began to quickly sprout and spill out from a magic circle floating above her chest, sliding around her body, and down towards the ground. As I stared, I could recognize the shape of the mouth from when Diana first met me, when she dangled me over it before letting me make a deal with her. Soon the tendril released itself from Diana's body and took physical form with purple and black scales. A head formed where its teeth was convulsing with new movement, as a wicked purple tongue lashed from its newly formed mouth. A giant 100-foot snake now stood between the Demon's Lord army and Diana's army. It hissed at the creatures in the front line and quickly began to slither forward in hunger. I didn't get a chance to watch it attack. I turned back to Diana to see her lift up off the ground and form a purple saber in her hand, lifting it above her head.
For the pride of Lilith, to battle!
At her last word, Diana flew forward and slashed through the air, causing a large purple arc to shoot out of her saber and strike down a section of the Demon Lord's front line. I watched as both armies charged forward towards each other and began to clash swords. Beside me, a rain of arrows flew from the battlements down towards the incoming section of the Demon Lord's army, causing me to duck in case they returned fire. To my surprise and glee, the Demon Lord's army couldn't push Diana or her army back. They held their positions and cut down every enemy that came at them. The Demon Lord, watching instead of fighting, glared as Diana flew through the air, cutting down sections of the army with ease. The snake that Diana had summoned was dealing major damage to the enemy as well, carving through the lines and devouring handfuls of them at a time. Each time it did, it either got bigger or became much more menacing. I could barely take it all in. The battle was merciless, seemingly endless. Diana's army was small but had strong morale, cutting through the Demon Lord's men with ease. The archers beside me continued raining arrows on the incoming soldiers, hoping to nickel and dime their numbers for the ground troops. I was glad that Diana wanted me there, but I knew that I wasn't ready to fight in a war, so I kept crouched to watch the battle safely. Eventually, Diana's army began to push back, forcing the enemy soldiers to either retreat or try to regain ground. Diana, however, decided it was time to deal with the real threat and swooped towards the Demon Lord. Both demons arced their weapons at each other, Diana with her saber and the Demon Lord with a giant sword, and clashed still. As they did, purple flame and red lightning spasmed from the impact and pressed against each other in a battle of strength. The Demon Lord looked so much bigger than Diana, but somehow Diana matched his strength and did not budge in the parry.
How? You cannot be this strong!
You know nothing of true strength!
Some of the battling around the duel stopped just from the sheer sight of Diana matching the Demon Lord's power.
I am the Princess of Lilith. I will defy your will and save this world from your tyranny once and for all!
A clicky gas echoed through the air as Diana somehow managed to push back against the Demon Lord, forcing him to step back in the parry. Diana was doing it. She was defeating him. Exactly. The Demon Lord slid his sword from the power and swung again at Diana, making her block but failed to push her back. He repeated his attack twice, 3 times, but continued to be pushed back each time. The soldiers around them took in the moral inspiration and fought back tenfold, forcing the Demon Lord's army back over the arching horizon. Diana and the Demon Lord, however, continued to clash swords, beating steel to steel. As the Demon Lord finally jumped back, he formed a large ball of red lightning in his hands, shooting towards Diana like a flash of thunder. That attempt impacted, sending Diana flying back, but with her wings, Diana managed to flip back to face the Demon Lord with ease. In retaliation, Diana formed a spiraling set of purple fireballs above her hand and chucked them at the Demon Lord. With a glare, the Demon Lord slashed through each ball, forcing them to dissolve into the air. Diana glared hard in reply before flying at her opponent, slashing through the air with her saber. From there it became a battle of blades and close-range magic attacks. Neither side would give in and no soldier dared to step in, afraid of being the victim to one of their attacks. The duel became blurred by the sheer speed passing between them, fronting and powered at once, and it was slightly dizzying. Finally, the two slid away from each other. Diana was intact, breathing heavily from exerting so much energy, and the Demon Lord was weaponless. Adjusting my eyes, I could see that he was no longer carrying a weapon and was gripping his arm tightly to stop some wound from bleeding out.
How could this happen? How?
Diana didn't respond. She flew forward to engage him again, but stopped as the Demon Lord's body became overcome by red lightning, as if the lightning had ended him. The Demon Lord's body vanished.
I will return. Your kingdom will fall.
His voice echoed through the air, haunting everyone and making the trees around us bend and sway at its might. However, as the voice died out, the army the Demon Lord left behind vanished as well. It took a moment to take it in. We had won the battle. We fought and drove the Demon Lord and his army out of the kingdom. We did it. And you've done nothing, but whatever, Sure. Quickly, the soldiers of Diana's army cheered huzzahs for their victory. The snake vanished at last, and Diana herself slowly began to fly back towards me. I was grinning ear to ear as she did between the embouchures to me. However, I did not expect Diana's eyes to roll into the back of her head and for her to collapse against me. I wrapped my arms around Diana as she indeed fainted in my arms. Diana! As I collapsed on my knees with Diana in my arms, Cyril rushed over and dropped to his knees beside us, taking one of Diana's hands. Diana, however, didn't react, even as energy began to flow from Cyril to Diana's hand. What should I do? I'm not sure.